Okay? Now we clear the air. I have to tell you this because twice a year I do here in Princeton something that I call a free resume tune-up workshop. I do it here at the Trinity Church. Typically we have 70, 80 people there. And one time, I remember, there was a gentleman sitting really up close, fairly close to me. But he had such a heavy accent. And he asked a question and I didn't hear him. And we went like this 3 times. It was so painful for me, and I imagine for him it was horrendous. So please forgive me if I come closer to you just because I didn't hear it, okay? Okay, so we're on the interview. There's so many interview traps. You have to be smart enough and be aware that some of these questions, they are built in to kind of find out something about yourself. Only through training and practicing this, you can become better how to avoid interview questions. The way to do it is develop 3 to 5 short success stories. Politicians call this staying on message. I have an individual that by the way, I'm not into politics at all. But there is one individual that I love watching because he is an individual that I would characterize like this. Doesn't matter what the question is, he will just say what he wants to say. Could you name that politician?
All of them.
Yeah, some are better. I'll tell you who McCain stands out. You know, I watch him because every time there's a question, doesn't matter what the question is, he'll say whatever he wants to say. So there's something to learn from those politicians. And also stay always, always, always positive. Don't allow any negativity to be a part of your answer. A hiring manager wants to hire somebody who's positive. They don't want to hear anything negative. Oh, now is the interview with the boss, different than the HR whose function is to deselect. Anybody that disagrees with me here? By the way, is the HR department hiring?
No.
No.
It is if
Unless
it's
it's
No,
HR
the
job.
HR is hiring only for HR. They are not the hiring department. HR is,
filter.
I hate to put it this way, in my mind I think HR is like a real estate agent. Somebody wants to sell a house, somebody wants to buy a house, they just make the connection. That's what they do. So when they ask questions, they are very, very different than the boss. In fact, this lunchtime I had a client that had an interview with HR. And it was very, very clear that this is an HR type questions. Later on, he's in San Francisco, so I expect when I go tonight to hear from him later on at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, which is now actually, California. He has his interview with the boss. They want to hear what he says, how different are the questions. But when you interview with the boss, he looks at it from a different angle. He is looking for the fit, and he is looking most likely similar to him or her. And here I have a case. One of my clients told me the following. He interviewed in New York City. 10 minutes into the interview, he's kind of looking up on the wall, and he sees the hiring manager kind of leaning on a bicycle, smiling with a helmet and, the uniform that they wear. And he was smiling, and the individual said, oh, I can tell you like bicycling. 80% of the interview was, where did you buy your bicycle? When do you go out? What group do you belong to? And so forth. Only 20% was, can you do the job? Could you guess what happened to him?
Hired.
Hired and happy. Yeah, so very common. It is a known thing that hiring managers hire people like they are. Therefore, it would be to your advantage to find some commonality and start talking about those things that are common between you and the hiring manager. Don't think that the interview is only about, can you do this job? By the way, the can you do this job, which means do you have the skills, represents only 20% of the thinking of the hiring manager. Eyebrows are being raised? Yes, perhaps? 20% only on skills, yes? Yeah. Because, you see, by the fact that you sit already in the chair, that means that you are pre-qualified. You started with 100, 200 people that started competing for that position. Most of the people were disqualified. Only 5 people are qualified to go in and compete for the job through an interview. There is an unspoken convention among hiring managers, and I can tell you, I hired many, many, many people in my career. If you don't have the skills to do the job, in other words, if you cannot possibly do the job, why would I bother? Thank you, John. Why would I bother asking you to come in? Right? So, fit is, to my estimate, about 60%. And fit means something like this. Assume I hire you. Would I enjoy having lunch with you in the cafeteria? Fit means, if I hire you, would your future peers come to me and say, Alex, good decision. He is a good hire. He's a great contributor. Or would they say the opposite? I'm sure all of you at one time or another have a boss. Even now, you have a boss. Do you think your boss's opinion matters to you? Yes? Now, you need to move your head a little more so I really know that you are with me. Yeah, I think it's very important. I think it's very important. You don't want to make bad decisions. Okay? So therefore, at the time that I'm interviewing, I'm a kind of visualizing my boss, what he would say if I were to hire this individual. That's also part of the fit. And the last part, I said 20% skill, 60% fit. Could anybody guess what is the last 20%? Appearance, somebody said?
Personality.
Appearance is fit. Personality is fit. Attitude is fit.
Height.
Depends what the position.
Age.
Said that. Age, that's fit.
Experience.
Good. Great. Sandra knew it. It's commitment. So 20 skills, 60 fit, 20 commitment. Let me tell you what is in that word commitment. How many of you have heard something like this? Tuesday I have an interview in New York City. I'm not interested in that position. I'm just going in for the practice. Have you guys heard anything like this before? Now, do you think if I'm the hiring manager, do you think that I want to spend my time on you?
No.
No, of course not. Of course not. Okay, so I remember the time that I was interviewing people, I paid a lot of attention to this, are you really, really, really committed to this job? How many of you would like to put $100 in the bank and get 95 after a year? No, oh good, okay, no. How many of you would like to put $100 in the bank and get $110 at the end of the year? Especially nowadays. I hope most of you, right? A hiring manager wants the same thing. You are an investment. This is what they want from you. They want to put you in a position. I remember at the time that I interviewed people, I already saw what can I do with this person 6 months from now and 18 months from now. I'm looking at my investment. Is my investment going to grow? This is real. This is real. I mean, any manager not looking this way, he's not a good business manager. So, let's move on. Question, will this candidate support me, make me look good, remain loyal? Do you think that's a valid question in the mind of the hiring manager?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. share stories how you supported previous bosses. Okay, this is, because I say to myself, if you support your previous boss, if I were to hire you, you'll support me. Does this make sense? Okay. Okay, when prompted to ask questions, what are you asking about? I want to hear from you. In our interview and the manager, the interviews, you said, okay, John, do you have any questions for me? What sort of questions are you asking?
What other areas are the company looking into that could be fulfilled by this person?
No, the question is this. You are the candidate. The boss is asking you, do you have any questions for me? What questions would you ask me?
I think he's asking if there's any growth potential.
Growth, yeah, growth potential.
What do you think I'm going to tell you? Don't expect anything. Not in this department. Not a good question. Anybody else?
What's the next step
What's the next step in the process?
in the process?
What's the next step in the process? Randy, that's a good question. That's a good question. Do you agree with it, that this is a good question? I think it's a good question. I'll give you in a minute some question that I advocate that people should. The lady in the back.
I would ask questions about issues that I, as a potential employee, could resolve for them. Ask them about issues so that in the follow-up letter after the interview, I can address those as to what my qualifications are, and how I can help to resolve the problems where I hired.
The lady said to ask questions that later on in your thank you letter you can address. Did I understand that? Okay, yeah, that's good. You're on my side. Huh?
Is the position a new position, or is it a position that's being filled? If it's being filled, what happened to the previous occupant?
I don't know if this is a good question. I'll tell you why. First of all, if there is something, I'm the hiring manager, and let's say there is something that I really don't feel very comfortable talking with you about. Do you think that I will be honest with you?
Is it not something to find out?
I have a line item in a minute about what question to ask, and this will fit very well into that. If I were you, I would be very, very cautious what questions you ask. Because if you disclose yourself, you ask questions that are pertinent to you. Let's say I know I have a client, a young lady who has 2 little children. And 2 minutes after I met her, it was very, very, very clear to me where her focus is. Can she get out at 4:30 because she needs to be with the kids in the evening? Nothing else was so important. That only focus was this. And that, if you ask me such a question, that you want to leave at 4:30 every single day, this is negative. I would hold it against you. No? Don't agree? We can talk after that.
That's what a typical day
Just
is
a
like.
second, gentleman in the back.
How about a question that how can that position contribute to the growth of the company? And where do you see that, it's kind of what she said, that I can add to that. So something that's focused back on the company and your contribution to the company, not about you.
I kind of like that. That's a positive thinking. You're looking for goals that talks about co-commitment.
To the company, yes.
Yeah, I like that. Let's take one more, and then I'll give you what I think are good questions. Okay.
What a typical day is like at the company?
That's a good question. That's a good question. But you see, it might be a little tainted, because there's anything bad, do you think in an interview I'm going to disclose it? Let's say this is a crazy, crazy company. Every day is a new major crisis here. I'm not sure to what extent I'm going to disclose it, because that might scare you away. Now, it's a little bit dishonest for me not to give you an indication, because if I lead you on, and eventually I hire you, and the second day you said, this is a madhouse, how did I get here? It looks like somebody was here.
What if the position is a good match for your skills, but you also see that within the company there are things that you could improve upon and move up to, and that you would like to let them know that you are hungry to aspire to greater positions?
I think that's a good one. Somebody in the back there, but before that I want to say something. I'll give you a concrete case. I interviewed in New York City with a company called BlackRock. Any of you heard of that company?
Yeah.
Okay. 11 o'clock to 12. I thought the interview went quite well. At 11:55, the manager says something like this. Alex, do you have any questions for me? Oh, wow, in 5 minutes I need to be in a meeting with my boss. What did he hint?
You're done.
Let me tell you this, and please accept this for me. 99.9% of the cases, the interviewer will ask you, do you have any questions for me? Please interpret that as follows. He is saying, basically, what I needed from this 1 hour chat I got. As a matter of courtesy, I'll give you the opportunity to ask questions, but please do it fast. I have other things to do today. This is exactly what it is. Okay, so let's say in that situation, I basically barely one question I could ask, and I could see on him that his body was there, but his mind was already sitting with the boss. Okay, so assume you have only one question that you can ask. It better be a good one, and I think I will give you some hints in a minute. So let's take one more time. Somebody back.
How about questions that helps me to know better how much I want to work there? In other words,
So give me one more time. Say it louder.
how about questions that help me better to know if I want to work with them, like turn it around? But it's a somewhat two-way interview.
Wait until one or more bullets and I'm going to ask. I think the lady in the back, or somebody, or gentleman, sorry.
One of the major challenges that the department is facing with this position will help.
Excellent question. In a minute, I'll give you a few questions I recommend to my clients. Okay, so what I'm saying here is this. This is a huge trap because through your question, you reveal your concerns. Like this lady that I mentioned. She was so direct. She was so direct. This was her concern. Just 1 second. I'll let you talk in a minute. Ask only strategic questions. Do you understand when I mean strategic, what I mean here? Mm-hmm. Strategic means positioning yourself for the next thing to come. That's a strategic question. I'll give you some example in a minute. I have to smile. I put this on bullet, and when I put this on, I really had a big smile on my face. I can't, by the way, I had 11 jobs in my career. I can't believe I was offered these jobs because I asked the wrong questions all the time. Now that I'm teaching people how to ask the right questions, I said to myself, I asked the wrong questions. My logic was this. I interviewed with people and I wanted them to feel good and I wanted to compliment them. And when they asked me, do you have any questions for me? I wanted to say, you did such a great interview that really everything in my mind was answered. So really, I have no questions. This is so dumb because probably the person said, this guy has no questions? I can't believe it. It's not a good thing. Please don't do what I did throughout my career. You have very legitimate questions, but leave them to the very end, some only after the offer. Now, I know you may not like this. I know you may not like this. Some only after the offer. Because you may reveal some things that may disqualify you. I think somebody in that area Raise the question. You raise, yes.
My God, I forget what it is now. Oh my God.
It's okay. Later. I don't want to push on you. Sorry about it.
How about the challenge when you're told that you are overqualified during the interview?
Okay. The statement you're overqualified is not always that you're overqualified. It's a kind of one of those things that if you're told, you really can't come back. It's one of those, if you're overqualified, said, okay, I understand. Basically, they don't want you. So,
But
you
they
know,
don't.
not necessarily always you're overqualified
Right.
is that you're really overqualified. Many times it is.
So could you ask a question, what is the right, the appropriate fit for this company? How would you describe the ideal candidate fit? Could you ask that question?
If you were to ask me that question, I will give you like the company line, something very vanilla flavored, generic. I will not give you anything that can get me in trouble.
Okay.
If I get my company in trouble and my company has to pay $500,000 because I said the wrong thing and there's a lawsuit and all this, my boss will not like it. Okay, somebody, just one second, somebody in the back had a thought. Yeah.
The response I give when someone asks if I'm overqualified, I said to them, and it was on the phone, and it got me an interview, I said, well, but if you're getting on a plane, would you rather have a qualified pilot or an overqualified pilot? And the person on the phone said, well, that's valid, okay. And it squashed their thoughts of me being overqualified. So,
Now, okay, let's talk about it. Let's take this as a fact. You were a vice president, you are out for 18 months, you really want a job, but the position is only on the director level. So you're overqualified. You see, I would not even consider you because I know that the moment, let's say you made $130,000, my job is only $100,000. Yes, you're hungry, you have kids in college, you have mortgage, you lease 2 cars, so you have lots of payments. Yes, I understand that. But I know one thing. You lived already on $130,000. So if I give you a job now, the moment you find something appropriate, you are gone. And I need to protect myself.
I'm sorry, I just want
You're
to say,
next.
if that's the question, then you want to protect yourself. It's about loyalty. However, from the company perspective, I also know that you're not loyal to me, and if any day that they eliminate that position, I'm out. So, question of loyalty.
It's a two-way street.
Yeah.
I hate to put my son on the spot here, but I have conversations with my son occasionally. And he says, Dad, how do you spell loyalty? Because his generation, there is no loyalty. My generation, everything is loyalty. I think you have to work hard, loyalty to the company and so forth. The younger generation, I read so many articles about it. I'm sure you have too. The word loyalty disappeared from America's culture when you are 20-something. Okay, so please don't talk about loyalty because it's non-existent to this generation. I challenge you to read articles about it, and they all will tell you the same thing. It's a huge cultural change. I think you had, just a second, you had a question and then...
In complex interviews, sometimes you see 6 or 7 people during the day, and then you meet up again with the hiring manager.
At the end.
Should you save that big question?
Which is?
Something that the other people could not answer. What direction is the company going in terms of this? What is the philosophy of the company during this? An open-ended question that the other people could not answer. Should you have that in your mind as that's the question I'm going to ask at 5 p.m. when I meet with the hiring manager again?
I don't know what that question would be, because I would ask any and all questions the other people as well. If you have some serious concerns about the future of the company, some people know what the future of the company is, and some people know.
But those people are not at the level where the hiring manager knows the answer. These people are scientists, hiring managers, they run production. They don't know that. This person is in a position to know what's going on. And so I'm thinking that this could be perceived as an insightful question.
Good. You see, I'm giving you a kind of a theoretical question and give a theoretical answer. I don't know the answer. But allow me to, I'll read you some questions I recommend my clients to ask during an interview. Oh, another thing. When you are in an interview, and please take this from me, you are an actor. You act, and the hiring manager is watching you. Okay? Sometimes you have to act more than other times. And I always say that women are a little luckier than men, because some women, it's easier for them to be drama queen. And this is what you need to be sometimes. Okay, but you have to act it out. Here is what I suggest you do. The moment comes that the hiring manager says, so, John, do you have any questions for me? So what you do, and I hope you go to the interview with something decent, let's say something like this. And so you said, indeed, I have 3 questions. Now, I haven't opened my mouth yet, but what is your interpretation of what I just did?
You're prepared.
I'm prepared, I'm organized, I gave some
You
thought.
thought beforehand.
I typed it up. I mean, all good things, right? So then I said, okay, here's question number 1. Is there anything about my background that you would like me to clarify at this stage that would otherwise prevent a next step from taking place? Is this a good question?
Yes.
I think it's a good question. It's a strategic question. Shall I repeat it?
Yeah. Repeat it.
I'll be happy to. Is there anything about my background, and I do it slowly because some people want to write, okay? Is there anything about my background that you would like me to clarify at this stage that would otherwise prevent a next step from taking place? Basically, what you're saying, I'm dying to get this job. Like commitment. You remember how important it is? I'm dying to get this job. Is there anything else I can clarify this point, because I really want to move into the next step? Now, I know that those people in the back cannot see it, but I typed it up, and in between the 3 questions, there are probably 7, 8 lines. When he responds to this question, your job is to bring a pen and pencil and just write down what he said or she said. It's not a time to argue, rebut, answer anything. At this point, remember when they say, do you have any questions for me? They said, okay, get out, I'm done with you. So be brief. Here is a second question.
Could you read that one more time?
I'll be happy to. Is there anything about my background that you would like me to clarify at this stage that would otherwise prevent a next step from taking place? Okay. Here is a second question. What are the 3 most important traits that you're looking for the person hired for this job? Traits, not skills. What are traits? Somebody is quick on his feet. Somebody who is a quick learner. It's really not a skill to be a quick learner, it's a trait. And there are many. But remember, let's think let's think for a second, what are these questions? By the way, I hope you didn't fax these 3 questions to the hiring manager's house the night before, so he has a time to think about it. You put them on the spot, right? Now, putting somebody on the spot is not always a negative thing. I'm sure most, if not all of you, remember in college or high school at the time that you had multiple answer. Help me. Thank you. I'm missing a word. Multiple choice questions. That the professor said something like this. The first thing that comes to your mind is probably right. Don't think too much, right? You remember that? You heard that before? Yeah. So basically you're doing to the hiring manager the same thing. He really doesn't have time to meditate, think this through. So what his gut answer is coming out. And again, you take a pen and you just write it down. And then you say, and here is the last question. What will be the hardest part of this job? The hiring manager knows what would be hard for you, but this opportunity to extract that information quickly, you don't have a chance for him to really think about it. And if there's anything in his mind, an example might be, this is a big company, it's very complex, lots of power plays, politicians here and so forth. I need to hire someone who can come here and very quickly learn who is who and what is what and be effective. So he might tell you something like that. Okay, so we finish the 3 questions. At that point, you close your notebook and you get up and you say, Mr. Johnson, thank you so much for your time. Could I please have your business card? You get the business card and very politely you leave. And you go home. I hope you go home. What do you do at home? Somebody said, write a thank you letter, right? Makes sense? What are you going to write in your thank you letter?
The questions that we got.
It's right here. This is what I call the turbo effect. Do you guys know what turbo means? You know, it's in cars. There are some cars that they have the turbo. Basically, they take the exhaust and they recycle because in the fumes, there is still a little energy left. So it's recycled one more time and you get a little more power. That's a turbo. So this is what I call the turbo effect. It gives you an opportunity to answer to the hiring manager those questions where he has doubts about your candidacy. So far, so good? We are in agreement? Good. The lady has a question.
But at some point, when you're asking the questions face to face, do you try to answer them at a high level or wait till
You don't answer. Remember, when he asked you, do you have any questions for me? Basically, he said, okay, get out, I have other things to do. Okay? So you don't. Just 1 second. You answer it here. Okay? Now, so we agreed that you go home and you write a 3-paragraph thank you letter. The first paragraph, that a nice meeting, you nice things. The second paragraph is you answer to his doubts. And the third paragraph is basically, again, a polite thank you. It was so nice meeting you, great company, whatever. And that's it. Now, how do you send your thank you letter?
By mail.
By mail? That's an option.
Both email and hard copy to follow.
If I were to agree that email is answer, I wouldn't ask this question. It's not email. You know why? The big boss sits there, and he has 78 inbox emails, and yours comes in. He recognizes the name. I know. I just interviewed him yesterday. That's his thank you letter. He keeps going. He has other pressures. I have a suggestion for you. Make sure you stop at Office Depot and buy yourself good quality paper with matching envelope. Put your answer on that. As soon as you're done, go to the closest FedEx and tell the clerk, tomorrow morning, 10 a.m., please. And the clerk will say, $17.41, please. So what will happen next morning by 10 a.m., Jane, the secretary, is going to knock on the door of the boss and say, Alex, a FedEx for you, drops it on my desk, and she walks out, right? I told you I have 78 emails in my inbox. What do you think I'll do? A stupid FedEx, I'm not going to open it. Let me keep working, or I'll turn around, open that little strip, and I look inside, right? FedEx is FedEx. I will be very impressed. Nice letter, matching envelope, professional. This guy is smart. This guy is professional. Bless you. Okay. What will I do with that letter then? I know that you interviewed with 3 more people in my organization. What do I say? On the side I will write, to John, Peter, and Mary. I'll have my secretary duplicate it, put the inter-office envelope, and send it to them. So they have a chance to see your great letter. Remember, in an interview situation, there are 2 relationships that exist. One is you and the hiring manager, and you want to convince that individual that you are the ideal candidate. But there is another relationship that exists, and nobody's talking about it. That relationship is between you and those other people that are going to be invited for the interview. Going for an interview is a competition, and don't even try to convince me otherwise. It is a competition. Many people, 5, 3, 4, compete for one opening. You have to do whatever it takes to beat your competition. My suggestion is one of them, because it's very likely, unless they sit here, it's very likely other people will not do this and they will not send it by FedEx. The question I typically have, okay, I interviewed 7 people. 7 times $17.41, big bucks, right? Unless you're a high-level executive, then they can certainly afford it. But otherwise, people, I suggest, send it FedEx to the hiring manager, and the rest, email. But be smart. Don't send the email so it gets to the subordinate before the boss gets it. So send it after 10 a.m. next morning. I think somebody had a question. Yeah, just or the lady there.
I was going to ask, if you interviewed with multiple people, how should you send them the thank you note that you answered that?
I read your mind.
Yes.
And every day I read everybody's mind. That's my job. Okay, let's see what else comes here. I accepted the offer since I did not want to appear to my new employer as money is the only thing I care about. Big mistake. You should always negotiate.
With the scenario you just described with the FedEx and the emails, when you send the emails and the FedEx, are you going to have a CC on that? Are you going to show transparently that you are doing this?
Forgive me, could you speak louder?
When you send your FedEx letter to this hiring manager, are you going to show at the bottom of the page that you CC the subordinates? And are you going to show that on the emails to the subordinates?
My judgment is no. I don't know why. We could argue about this. My judgment is no. Let him get his, and you have, by the way, you don't say the same thing.
Not exactly.
Change it a little bit. Okay, you should always. Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. I have done that in the past, where I accepted the offer because you didn't want to seem like, yada yada. And other people in my company early on, they did kind of negotiate, and the ones that did, it was a turn off, and you just kind of, it was kind of like entry level jobs, so you just kind of everybody just took what they were offered. It was kind of poo-poo to ask for more. So when I was going for a better job, and I had a job offer with a pretty big benefit company, the HR person acted like I had nerve to ask for more, when really it would have been a lateral move because it was further, I would have to take, So she acted like I had nerve because I did do that.
My suggestion is always, look, I think I have a slide about this. hiring managers expect you to negotiate. I know that I always expected. People just accepted it and said, wow, that was an easy sale. Not always they got more out of me, by the way. But I expected a little bit. I wanted to see their personality. The only chance to negotiate is when, in quotes, they are in love with you. Please don't misunderstand what I'm saying here. There is such a period that they are in love with you, which means they really want you. They really want you. You guys have been interviewing for 2 months with this and that, and multi-sites and multi-level and multi-locations and so forth. And finally, the people decided that you are it. They don't want to hear what they don't want to expect. They rather pay you a little more money. There are some organizations that are notoriously cumbersome. One of them, universities. One of my clients was on an administrative assistant level. She interviewed 7 people. On that level, it interviewed 7 people, an hour each. Doesn't make sense to me, let me tell you that. If you're a senior executive, perhaps then, but not on a secretary's level. 7 people, an hour and a half, 2-hour interview, that's a joke. There are some organizations that are moving very, very slow. How many of you interviewed with J&J? Was it a fast process?
No.
It was? No. I know. It's just
job before they made the decision.
It's just forever. Some organization, yet in some organization, the process is quick. Musical George, okay. I'm not selling it. Okay. See, I don't have handouts, so I put this up here. In most cases, when I make a presentation, people have a question after they're embarrassed to ask here, or they have later on a question. I want to give them opportunity. They can call me. They can email me. I have a website. And by the way, this gentleman sitting up here front, John, he is my website consultant. He gets full credit. I don't know how many of you have seen my website? Good part. Okay, it's unique.
Can I say something?
Let me see. Yeah, I guess.
If you haven't been to Alex's website, I suggest you really go there, because in addition to all the things that he spoke about tonight, he put many tips and tricks on his website. There's some articles by Alex. He has the largest network for
the list of networking
groups in New Jersey,
New York, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, and so forth.
Plus, there's a completely updated listing of where Alex will be and for the kinds of talks he gives. There's a lot of information available on his website, so please go there and enjoy it.
And also, I want to point this out. This is a blog that I write approximately once a week. I hate reading, by the way. Interesting enough, yesterday I attended a lecture in Morristown by Jim Jensen. Anybody heard this name, Jim Jensen? He wrote 5 books. Terrific speaker. And he made a statement. He said, people read 5 seconds and then they move on. I could relate to that very well. I just don't like, I'm here and there and everywhere and moving fast. So therefore I write my blogs, I limit them to 350 and 400 words. And you should be able to read that in about a minute or so. Typically a concept, an idea. I write about once a week. And of course I write on subjects that should be of interest to you.
And there's a link directly from Alex's site to his blog.
Yeah.
So we don't have to write both of them down.
Okay, we got now to where I really wanted to get the question answer period. Let me see what time it is. We have another 15 minutes or so. Yes, Nick? Yes? 15 minutes? Okay, anybody? Question?
I'd like to get back to a very essential question that you asked about what questions should I ask? And my thought is that one should ask, what are your 3 most important credentials or criteria for hiring someone, and how have I fared on those 3 factors?
I think
Because
that's a
then
good question.
Question number 2.
you could answer directly to each one of those.
I think this is a pretty good to answer. I'll tell you this. I interviewed a zillion people, and I can tell you without any doubt, if you were to interview somebody once they left my office having an interview with me, and you ask the person, so what do you think your chances are? Everybody will say the same. I don't know, 50-50. Although in my mind, I kind of know, yes or no. Because I didn't want to be unfair to people. I didn't want to build them up and give them buying signals. Because, you know, until the signature is not on that piece of paper, you're not hired. And I've seen situations that everything went well. Actually, it happened to me. Someday, really, I had an opening. I interviewed several people. I set up my mind that I'm going to hire someone. I communicated with HR that this is the individual that I want to hire. But there was one person who was a CFO of our organization that had to put his signature on every new hire. And he told me, Alex, you're not going to hire anybody. I said, what do you mean I'm not going to hire? HR, my boss, everybody agreed that I'm going to hire. And actually, I identified an individual after 2-3 weeks of interview that is a person. No, you're not going to. We don't have money. And I wasn't allowed to hire. So it would be unfair for me to say, I'm going to hire you, and you're not going to be hired. This is unfair. So trust me, anybody interviewing with me left my office with, gee, I don't know, he was so nice, and you know, but I don't know if he's going to hire me. Only to be fair. How many times I heard this, that people said, yeah, the interview went really well, and you expect an offer, and it never comes. Okay, how should I go? So many people raise their hand. You.
Me. I have 2 questions, actually. One, is there any point in following up and asking if one is rejected, what the considerations were?
Yes, there is a point. I can tell you this. It's a litigious America, and people will really hesitate giving you the truth because they don't want to get in trouble. I can tell you this, I consider myself a fair individual, and when people ask me this, I told them I will be more than happy to tell you, but you must wait 60 days before I will be ready to talk to you, because I want them to cool off. Okay, but many people called me after 60 days and said, you remember, I'm John, Could you tell me what was the reason? And I tried to be as fair within legal limits to tell them what I saw strengths, but at the same time areas for improvements in the interview process. Fact is, there's only one opening, and you interview 5 people. 4 of them are going to lose, no question about it.
Another thing, how is humor in a setting regarded? I mean,
How is what?
Humor.
Humor.
I would imagine that people going through, a lot of people want to see someone stand out. On the other hand, it could be prejudice.
Thank you for asking this question. Humor could be a positive thing, but could be a big liability. Humor is a dangerous thing to test during an interview. I welcome if somebody has that type of humor that I consider humor. But otherwise, if I misinterpret it, it's not good for you. I caution you. Be careful. I think humor could be a positive thing, but there is a danger. That gentleman there, the gentleman behind you, sorry about that. And you are next, okay?
When do you act too much and when do you stop acting?
Good question. Is this a question for a man or a woman? No, I'm just joking. Because I said earlier, it's usually for women.
When you were talking about humor, it's pretty positive when the person interviewing is not humorous. Right?
I handed her 3 letters of reference, and she said, "Oh, can I have these? I'll just change the name on the top."
Again, humor could be dangerous. The question is, there are some questions that come to my mind when you really need to act it out, and I want to demonstrate. Would you mind being my hiring manager since and you asked me just a question? Alex, tell me about your weaknesses. Ask me the
Okay.
question.
Alex, tell me about your weaknesses.
Weaknesses. Let me think. Weaknesses. Well, what comes to my mind is a situation that I was in 3 years ago. I had a meeting with my boss and with my peers, and I continued that way. Okay, that's one. Let's do it one more time. Ask me the same.
Alex, tell me about your weaknesses.
The weaknesses I have is I had a meeting with my boss and with my peers 3 weeks ago. Which answer did you like, the first or the second?
The first one.
The first. Why? By me taking my eye away from her and saying, weaknesses. What did you think? What goes on in my mind?
Confident person. You were thinking about it, that you're confident.
That I'm, oh my God, this is difficult. How am I going to answer this? Wow. This is what I wanted to project, although I had the answer. It's much better than if I immediately, because here is a danger. By the way, tell me about your weaknesses, by a very common question. People buy these Barnes and Noble books about interviewing, and in every one of these books it says, give them something which is not important, which I totally disagree with. Tell me about your weaknesses is a very, very serious question. It's a common question. Let me see if somebody understands really what are they asking in this question.
I think you're asking, what did you see yourself having a problem? How did you overcome it? How did you improve yourself?
I'm looking something much deeper. It's a good answer, but I'm looking something much deeper.
Where did you screw up?
That's the answer, but I'm looking like a...
Honest.
Just one second.
Honesty.
How do you want to proceed?
That's the outcome, but I heard something...
Looking for honesty.
Honesty, that's exactly what the question. When I'm asking you, what are your weaknesses? I want to look at you, and I want to see that you look in my eyes, and you are man enough or woman enough to admit to me that you make mistakes. And that's okay. And that's okay, because I want to work with an honest person. If you give me an answer like this, it's a heavy-duty question. There's no question about it. This is very, very heavy-duty. It's very difficult for me to ask that question, more difficult for you to answer. And I'm testing your honesty, because if I detect that you are not honest, no good. I must work with honest people. Okay, just one second.
Also,
I need to get close to you. I can't hear you.
learn from your mistakes. You can learn a lot from a mistake. And I think you can interpret that perhaps in that answer. Yes, I made this error, but I learned or I improved.
Well, right. You see, I wanted to save time. I didn't continue my answer. But my answer, let me give you the whole thing. What is my answer to tell me about your weakness? I say, after I act this thinking, what I demonstrated here, I say, 3 years ago I found myself in a meeting with my boss and my peers. It was a budget meeting, and when it came my turn to talk, it was very evident that A, I wasn't prepared, B, I'm really not good with numbers. It was a huge embarrassment for me. And I made a decision that second that I better do something about it, otherwise my paycheck will stop at one point soon. So I took a course, a one-day course about budgeting. And I really learned what budgeting is all about and numbers. In fact, I started liking it. Now, 3 years later, in my organization, when people have difficulties, challenges with budgeting, I know that they come to me for advice. What did I do? I turned lemon into lemonade. The question was not, So what are your weaknesses as of the last week? What are your weaknesses? So what did I do? I took it back 3 years, like, yeah, it's not current what I have. I fixed it, and now I'm that good that people come and are asking for my advice. Turn lemon into lemonade. I think the gentleman in the back had a question.
Do you think a sharp interviewer would doubt the truth of that, of the first part of your answer, though? Because you know that they're going to come in loaded with that answer.
Thanks for asking this. Now, let me tell you this. I changed jobs 11 times. What does that mean? That means that I interviewed perhaps 24 times. And here's my opinion about interviewers. Out of 10, 5 are lousy, really bad. 3 are pretty decent, and 2 are very sharp. If I fall into the hands of those very sharp, I better have another one. Because I'll tell you what, if I see that your answer is a kind of too good and too polished, you know what I say? That's a good one. Do you have another one? And if I see that that is polished, I said, I hate to do this to you, but do you have another one? You see, I will get to the bottom of it. I will get to the bottom of it. The lady had a question.
I wonder if you have any tips on interviewing good persons who don't know how to interview well, those bad interviewers.
Good. 5 out of 10 in my book have no clue how to interview. By the way, do you know why they don't know how to interview? Because there is no school for interviewing. I mean, in my 40 years of working, I think I went twice to these courses of how to interview, but most people don't. Next thing you know, your boss says, okay, so John left, now you have to find a replacement. That's it. So you work with HR, and next thing you know, somebody is coming and sits the other side of your desk, and you are to interview and make a decision whether he or she is good or not. Okay, so you really learn by doing it. Okay? How do I know if people are not good interviewers? Have you guys had situations where 60 to 70% of the interview, he or she was talking?
Yes.
First sign. Now, why does it happen? Why is it?
They're trying to sell the company to you.
On the secondary level, yes. But I'll tell you why. The core issue is they don't know how to interview. Yet they are 10 hours on the job every day, so they can certainly talk in depth with details about their organization chart. And Mary reports to John, who wasn't here before, and I'm hearing all the details that I really couldn't care less. And he doesn't allow me to kind of sell myself. That's why. I hope I answered your question. You have an advantage sitting right here close to me.
I know.
Okay.
There are many opportunities to get some kind of accreditation.
Mm-hmm.
Not a master's degree, or something else, but some kind of thing that you can put on your resume that's going to count as a key word for them to search. They charge a certain amount of money. You do the whole thing online, and you can fill in a bunch of things on your resume, which is going to make you much more attractive to an employer. What are your general thoughts on those?
If you can get it, it differentiates you. It certainly is a good thing. Question, do they need it? Let's say you go for Six Sigma Green Belt. Okay, that's a recognized accreditation. If you apply for a company that they don't know how to spell Six Sigma, they have no idea what it is, it doesn't help you. Yet, if you work for a Six Sigma company and you have it, you clearly differentiate yourself from the rest of the crowd because you have it and they don't have to train you. Okay, let's do somebody. So many nice people raise their hand. Let's go. Let's go from here and we'll work our way. One more question. How about you?
I have an English degree, and I managed doctorate office for 2 years. And when I moved here, I've been unable to find a management job because I don't have an MBA. Is there anything you can do to make yourself stand out as having maybe not 10 years experience, but enough experience that you were well received? Is there a way to convey that in a market that's primarily scientific around here? They don't really value you if you don't have the people.
I thought you guys would ask me only easy questions. That's a difficult question. I don't know. I can't give you a good answer to that. But if you're English major, you should wordsmith your resume in a nice way that you can overcome that. But look, if you don't have MBA, you don't have MBA. If they require an MBA, then that's what it is. Okay, Nick told me this, but I'll tell you what.
I know Ian over here has had his hand up for a very long time.
Okay.
Ian, right there.
Okay.
Who's her?
Oh, I'm so sorry. And you were the first one here today.
You mentioned obviously with the thank yous. Now, after that, I follow up with phone calls a week later, sometimes getting in touch with the person, sometimes not. What do you recommend for that next step after that?
I definitely think you should follow up. Let's say you have an interview, and in the interview it comes up like, what is the next step? And they tell you, and you have an understanding, and nothing happens. At that point, you have nothing to lose. At that point, I suggest pick up the phone and try calling the hiring manager, not the HR. Try getting a hold of the hiring manager. You really have nothing to lose. Okay? Very politely, not to bother, but follow up. If he or she is a decent individual, they'll tell you exactly what's happening.
I have a question.
This is a -1 already because I'm done with questions.
I'm just curious if everyone in this audience knows what a hiring manager is. Because he keeps saying hiring manager. Do you all know what a hiring manager is, as opposed to like someone who might be interviewing you? Does everyone know that? Maybe you might
Well, there's
explain.
several people say no. The hiring manager is a person who has authority to hire. He might be a vice president, he might be a president, he might be just a little lieutenant in the organization. That's what the hiring manager. Sorry for not clarifying that. I thought that people know. Okay. I know I'm done. I know I'm done. I'm going to be kicked out from here if I take another question. But you know what? I will be here. If not here, I will be out there. We need to end it here, but we need to leave the room by 9.
Right.
Okay, I'm
We
not
do, but
leaving.
Feel free to network. Alex is going to hang out for a little bit, so I'm sure he'll be more than happy to answer some questions one-on-one with you. I just want to thank you so much, Alex, for coming out tonight. It was terrific, and thank you to the library.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming out. I hope to see you November 9th for our next program, and then we'll be back here again November 30th. Thank you.
Thank you.